Any questions you guys have about things related to the course?
I've got one, too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to have a lot of background noise today, so I'm going to have to stay muted most of the time. But I was wondering if you might just recap a summary of the definition of rhetorical situation and also exigence.
Sure. A rhetorical situation is whatever the context or environment or timing or people involved that a piece of rhetorical, a rhetorical thing exists in. So, I mean, it's everything that you can imagine in terms of the situation. And if you have, I mean, some pieces of rhetoric are so obviously tied to a rhetorical situation. If you are getting married and you decide to write a invitation to people and you design it in a certain way, and you send it to people, I mean, it is a very concrete, specific rhetorical situation. It has to happen at a certain time because the wedding is going to happen at some time. So the invitation must occur before it happens. If you get it afterwards, it's kind of insulting or something. You have specific audience that you've written it to and you send it to them. There are new mediums that people are using for rhetorical situations that have something to do with the kairos. So right now, if you're sending out a wedding invitation, you know, you'd have to acknowledge something probably having to do with COVID. Well, depending on your audience. So everything to do with the people, the environment, the circumstances. Now, sometimes, especially when we're talking, say, about a literary thing, there may be a rhetorical situation at the immediate time of publishing, but then something stays and it, you know, it's not designed for only this very narrowly defined audience like an invitation would be. And so, you know, that just is part of thinking about that rhetorical situation. Does that help on rhetorical situation?
Absolutely.
Okay, so pretty much anything you can think about in terms of who's writing what to whom, when, for what purpose, to accomplish what, etc. You can kind of use the reporter's W questions kind of as a way to start thinking about it. Now, exigence, I think, is a sort of a subcomponent of rhetorical situation. I think of it as the sort of triggering thing that causes this piece of rhetoric to somehow be produced, emerge, be written. Kairos has a lot to do with exigence. And a lot of times people are talking, they're talking about one and talking about the other. They almost see it as similar, a different thing, or the same thing, rather. One thing that's sort of a subcomponent of thinking about exigence are things that people are interested in, sort of how one piece of rhetoric might lead to another piece of rhetoric. An obvious example would be an organization like the NSF, the National Science Foundation, sends out a call for proposals, CFPs they're called. And that is a document. They spend a bunch of time on crafting it in the way they want to. It's a rhetorical thing within a rhetorical situation. Then scientists around the world look at this RFP and then they compose a piece of rhetoric in response to it. So they compose a proposal in response to the call for proposals. They would never, well, not never, but generally, at least in the NSF situation, people wouldn't just send in proposals. They have to send in a proposal that's in response to a specific thing. So there are ways in which pieces of rhetoric are responding to each other in direct and indirect ways. And so that's sometimes part of the exigence. Other pieces of rhetoric, events. So your letter from Baldwin to his nephew, why did he decide to write that then at that time? That's the exigence, he didn't decide to write it some other earlier, and he didn't decide to do it later. What was it that triggered it at that particular time in that particular situation? Any other things that you guys have thought about that helps you understand exigence? It's kind of a cool term. I mean, to some extent, learning theory is learning terms. The world is all, I mean, it's so complex. There's so many things going on. It's hard sometimes to piece it together. And the process of naming something kind of puts an order in it. You get a term like exigence and you think, okay, so let me just, focus on what it is that's triggering a particular thing. And just understanding what the meaning of that term, that's really what rhetorical theory is, understanding these terms that we use to, put order on all this language floating around us, I guess. It's kind of how I think about it. So sometimes people, criticize academics for being just, coming up with fancy vocabulary for things everybody already knows already. And that's certainly true. I mean, and if you hear something that it says, that's just giving a name to something I already knew already, well, that's cool. I mean, that means they've captured something, I think that is meaningful, gives a sense of, I don't know, gives you an explanation, helps you understand the world in some way. Of course, I'm an academic. I've got lots of arguments of why we're a good thing to have. So, any other questions? Jay, it's so good that you ask questions. Okay. A lot of stuff on my screen. Let us see if we can organize it better. Let's close this. How do we close this? There we go. Ooh, that's really red. Every day I just take my power or slide thing and copy and change the color. But at this point, too many colors, so I don't remember which is attached to which, but just to try to make sure we know which is which. So we're gonna kind of try to spend the time today being very practical, actually working out logic and both from a syllogism perspective and a Toolman perspective. And just to it's complicated, it's new, but it is really helpful. And the exercises we're going to look at today, especially, are I think we'll see why trying to analyze the actual argument helps you in responding, reacting, attacking, counteracting an argument, because if you can kind of work out the parts, you can see where the logic is falling apart. Now, there's a section in the text that has a whole bunch of fallacies listed, and I've never been very good at remembering lists of things like lists of fallacies. So I'm not expecting you to know all those different fallacies. But what we're going to look at today will kind of get us at some of these different fallacies. I should probably say that there are some that are just really useful. Ad hominem is a fallacy where you're attacking the person rather than the argument itself. I suppose in a way it is a argument of ethos. It's like saying, this must be a stupid argument because this person is stupid. And in general, we're discouraged from doing things like that. Or the overgeneralization is a really useful one, and we'll look at some of those today. First, let me just remind you where you are on the whole process. I'm in the process of reading your sort of final blogs on the opinion piece. This will be the final blog on that. And remember to, this is for everybody out there in the virtual void, remember to do that and post it in the blog. Just do it as a new entry in the blog and click to a, if you can use a Google Doc, click it to a Google Doc. And that way it's really easy to access. It's also easy for me to know that you've actually done that, because I get a little notification that says there's a new post. So that way I know to go look at it. The quiz will be open tomorrow through Sunday night. It's due Sunday night. It's open book and open time. And it's mostly just kind of making sure you understand the terminology and that you understand what a syllogism and how to use Toolman terms and stasis terms. And you can see the schedule for everything else. So then the second blog that we're starting on, which is a whole different blog, it's due next Wednesday. You can find it by looking for the blogs, and you will see now there are 2 blogs. So there's drafting and revision of the persuasive argument. That's the first one that we've been doing, and the last entry on that should be done by now. And then I've added a new one, drafting revision of rhetorical analysis. And a lot of you in the discussion board where I was talking, where I asked you to brainstorm subjects for the rhetorical analysis, a lot of you started already doing the rhetorical analysis. So I posted a little comment that just take that stuff and move it over into the blog. And here, as it, I just started this on Monday. It's not due till a week from now, so nobody's posted anything. But what you do is you create a blog entry. If you've got this on a Google Doc, when you create the blog entry, all you need to do is click on this link thing and put in a URL. Oh, look, there's my URL for Zoom, and it will do. And you do. I usually say new window just because it's easier for me if I have windows open, but then I do end up with thousands of windows across the top. And then you do that. Since that was actually a link, that was what I'd saved recently, which was the Zoom invite for something. And, you can then just post the entry. And then this is what anybody sees on it. I will end up deleting with that after class just because I don't know that I want that blog. And then over here on the index, sometimes people panic when we get into a new month and because they can't see their previous items. So this is a brand new blog. So I'm only going to have things in March, but then when we move to April, it'll shift it to the April entries as well. It's not really like a blog. I mean, it's the Blackboard version of a blog, which is different from others, but okay. All right, so we're kind of going over the stasis theory. The idea about stasis theory is trying to understand what type of argument an argumentative claim is. And so I do keep, when I ask you to look at these articles, I guess I realize it's sort of confusing because there are many different claims in a long piece of article. But I am interested in you thinking about what's the overall claim that they're trying to make and what's the overall stasis they're trying to make. Are they making a big point about what happens or what will happen? That's why fact is also called conjecture. So, and a lot of times a causal analysis is also a factual analysis because you're conjecturing what was the cause of something. It's about something that does or doesn't happen. So that's, of course, something that keeps playing out over and over in the climate change debates is, we know that there is global warming. Well, no, we don't know. So we have all these things that are going on, and there's debates about what it really is that's going on. Is it global warming? Is it climate change? Is it, is it nothing? Is it like asteroids coming to Earth? What is the badness of it? And then there's also these debates about, whether these intense weather events are caused by climate change. And then there's this debate about whether this intense weather events that might be caused by climate change are caused by human actions. And of course, which of the human actions? So that's where this whole, a big source of disagreement, especially over the last few years, where there was an increase in climate change doubters. I think now under the Biden administration, we'll at least maybe move towards a more common, we won't be arguing the fact of it as much, but we may be arguing the causes more, or the specific causes. And of course, the whole process of calling it something, defining it as something, is also part of the debate. So, I mean, part of the thing that we've seen is that, people called it global warming, and then everybody else, then people who were hostile to the idea said, well, it's freezing. And you're saying that this polar ice cap frozen week in Texas and Arkansas is part of global warming. Well, what's warm about 0 degrees? And so then they changed to more of a definition of climate change, or words like that. And then the quality evaluation or value arguments that are about whether, this is a bad thing or how bad it is. It does seem like on that regard, there's a fairly large consensus. But then, of course, we have a huge debate about what to do about it. And, we're definitely all unsure about that. Objection is the weird one. And basically it's a so what kind of argument. That is, it doesn't really matter. This is not something we have to even think about. Or, we don't need to think about climate change. What we need to think about is the economy, kind of thing. And so that's what I want to kind of go over today, but also the enthymeme, which is a reduced syllogism using rhetoric rather than logic. And to me, it's helpful to figure out what the syllogism is. And actually, the Toolman framework is a way of working out the missing parts in the enthymeme. And then you can think about how it functions in the argument, what's missing and what's not. And actually, that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So I had a not as good diagram that I had not looked at closely enough when I put it in the slideshow last class. So this is a better one. This is the basic framework for Toolman. So you have these facts, pieces of data, he calls it data, or the textbook also calls it pieces of information, just stuff. And so that leads you to some kind of a conclusion. It looks like rain, so I need to bring my umbrella. So here's a fact. It looks like rain. Here's a conclusion. Therefore, I need to bring my umbrella. There is a warrant there that is so understood and so shared that probably you don't have to explicitly state it. What would that warrant be? Looks like rain, so I need to bring my umbrella.
That rain requires bringing an umbrella.
Yeah, well, it looks like rain. There's kind of a chain of things. It looks like rain, therefore it will rain. And therefore I'll need some protection like an umbrella. And, it's so obvious that you don't even think of that as some kind of missing premise. And so that the fact that you don't is that you helps you kind of, be able to argue things without having to go through every single subpoint along the way. Of course, there are people who will say your warrant is inaccurate. That is that one warrant, like if it looks like rain, meaning it will rain. Oh no, if it looks like rain, that means it might rain. It usually rains. It never rains. It just gets cloudy in Arkansas, but it never rains. And so you may decide that you need to qualify it and say something like, so probably I need to bring my umbrella because, it's not a absolute fact that if it looks like rain, it will rain. And so then I'm going to bring my umbrella. Then, there's kind of jokes out there. I'm going to bring my umbrella so that it won't rain, which has a warrant in there that says something like, oh yeah, when I get prepared for bad weather, it doesn't come. And so I'm going to be helpful to everybody else and keep it from raining. Or I washed my car, so it's going to rain tomorrow is another one. I washed my car, so it's going to rain tomorrow. There's a warrant in there, something like, if I go ahead and spend the money on washing my car, then, the universe is going to play a joke on me and give me free car washing by raining. One of the things about rebuttals is that actually rebuttals can be rebutted against anything in the rest of the argument. So you can rebut, they put it sort of here in this sort of phase of you're working out the argument. Just kind of hard to come up with a visual that really expresses it. But you can rebut facts, you can rebut the warrant. So if I say it looks like, I washed my car, so it's going to rain tomorrow. And then you have a warrant that says somehow the universe chooses to play jokes on me by giving me free car washing after I spend money on it. Somebody could definitely argue with that warrant that you've had. One of the ways they could argue with it is, all the times that you washed your car and it didn't rain right after. So there are lots of ways in which you can rebut things. You can rebut the facts, you can rebut the conclusions and the warrants. So we looked at this Dr. Seuss issue last class. And so there were racist images in 6 of the books. And I had a picture of all those. And then the conclusion or the claim that was made by the Seuss Enterprise people was they shouldn't be published. We're not going to publish them. What's the warrant there? If you have racist images in children's books, they shouldn't be published there. And you can see how that is a syllogism. So the major premise is if you have racist images in children's books, they shouldn't be published, or put it more simply, racist children's books shouldn't be published. Then the minor premise is Dr. Seuss's, 6 of Dr. Seuss's books have racist images. And then the conclusion is, therefore we shouldn't publish it. And so it's, there are various ways that you can visualize or try to think about syllogisms, and I was going to try to do that, but I couldn't really figure out my technology for doing that. I mean, one way to think about it is sort of Venn diagrams. So if you have a major premise that's racist books shouldn't be published for children, you know, shouldn't be read by children. You have basically a circle, the largest circle in your Venn diagram, which is this category of things that shouldn't be published and read by children. Your major premise is saying that this small circle within that overlaps completely, says that one of the categories of things that shouldn't be published are racist books with racist images. So you've got a large book of categories of books that shouldn't be published, a smaller circle of category that that says, you know, there are racist ones that shouldn't be published. And then you have a new piece of data. Dr. Seuss has 6 books that have racist images. That piece of data fits in the smaller circle of racist images, which fits in the larger circle of shouldn't be published. And so therefore your conclusion is they shouldn't be published. As you can see, it gets kind of confusing. It would work better with a visual. Really would work better if I could use the whiteboard in Zoom, which I guess I need to learn how to use, but I haven't been able to make it work very well. So there were a variety of different warrants there. So, you know, racist images in Seuss shouldn't be published. That's the data, and then the claim. And the warrants were, first one was the one that was expressed by the Seuss enterprises when they made their announcement. Hurtful and wrong images shouldn't be seen. So I thought that was kind of an interesting statement, because hurtful and wrong are 2 very different kinds of things. And so I just thought that was interesting. Another one would be, let's keep Dr. Seuss's image intact by deleting his bad images. That would be kind of a cynical view of the decision. I call that the Michael Rodriguez point of view, because I think she usually goes up with a cynical point of view about corporations. And then I thought this was an interesting one. His stepdaughter said, these aren't racist. He wasn't racist, you know, you shouldn't say that about him. But she agrees with the decision because of the current environment, which is so sensitive that we need to protect people from these negative images. That's, you know, it's a slightly different kind of warrant. Now, each of these points, these are the warrants, each of these warrants could be argued. You know, somebody could debate whether hurtful and wrong images should be seen or not. And that's what one of the editorials from the Democrat Gazette said. They said, okay, let's change the claim to the Seuss company shouldn't make money off this. But let's still believe that the hurtful and wrong images that Seuss wrote should be seen. So they, you know, I was talking about exigencies versus that where you end up having pieces of rhetoric that lead to other pieces of rhetoric. These little debates, you know, and this kind of stuff happens a lot now because we have so much technology that shares things. So for a week or so, the Seuss debate is like everywhere, and everybody's doing a editorial and everybody's speaking to it. And it is possible to find all sorts of different arguments, which is what I did over the weekend, trying to find all these different arguments being offered about Seuss. And so that's part of the exigence of this whole debate and each of these rhetorics is that, the Seuss enterprise did something on March 2nd, Dr. Seuss's birthday, Read Across America Day, and that triggered all these rhetorical responses, which is just kind of interesting just to see. And then if you're interested in how, the range of political views and the range of conservative to liberal goes out and how that affects these things, it's interesting to me. I mean, I find it very fascinating how all the politics gets into is part of these debates, and that has to do with the exigency of, something happened. Now, in 2 weeks, this is probably all going to be forgotten and we'll on to some other little flare up of sorts. But in the meantime, it's helpful, I think, to just see what's going on. As I said, there could be different claims. And in fact, that's what these different editorials expressed. So the Seuss Enterprises took the claim, therefore they shouldn't be published, we're going to stop publishing them. But then the piece we looked at last week that was mostly about this, it was the editorial from the New York Times about written by a Black man, and his focus was therefore they shouldn't be read by children, and his whole thing was really supporting the argument of why shouldn't racist images be read and seen and in children's books? Why is it important? The editorial from that I had you look at for a few minutes about putting it into the public domain is a different claim. It's saying, no, they shouldn't be published. Let them be published, but let them be published in as an open source text or in the public domain under the CC copyright, which is Copyright Commons, which is letting things be published without under all the rules of copyright. And then the one that's got hysteria in the title, her claim is, okay, there are racist images in 6 books, but so read something else. Her argument is, and why does she say you should read something else? Well, the warrant for her is, Dr. Seuss is not that important as a child author. There are so many better child authors or authors of children's books out there. And so she ends up supporting this warrant about, the better children's authors that are out there that we ought to go read. Which is this one, I don't know if people had a chance to read it, but we won't really have time. So the claim is, so what, read other books. From a Toolman perspective, there's racist images, she's not disagreeing, but she says, so you should read other books. So she's saying, okay, I accept it, don't read it, this is harmful, but why are we worrying about Dr. Seuss? Let's look at so many better authors. That's her warrant is, if there's racism in Dr. Seuss, then go read somebody else. And the most of her editorial is the backing. She just gives us a lot of examples of better children's authors to go read. So what's the stasis in that Seuss article, in the hysteria article? Well, it's, what you should do. In fact, most of these were about what you should do. And that's a policy argument. You could maybe call it an objection argument because she sort of has a so what, let's not debate it kind of attitude, but she does end up debating it. So I still think, and she does end up saying, what do you do if you find that your beloved Dr. Seuss has racist images? Go read something else. It's a straight policy argument. And this would be really interesting to discuss if we had a little more time. I wanted to be sure that we talked about other sort of perspectives, because the reality is that, and I think Micah posted a article from The Guardian that was similar. The Washington Examiner is a very conservative Washington newspaper. And so that's how I know it's conservative. So that's how I knew that it would have a conservative point of view. You can tell that from the title. But their argument has to do with how this is evidence of cancel culture, which is going to lead me to the exercises. So I did send out in your in the announcement to Blackboard, which was sent as a email to you. Can't use the email listservs for all the courses because there are 4 different sections, so it makes it too complicated. But I wanted to send you a PDF and a Word view version so that you would have your own. And if you can, so if you have printed it up, or if you can at least pull it up on your screen, we will work with it. So I sent you a Word version and a PDF version. And it looks like this. So does everybody have either the Word or the PDF version available, either in print or on the screen? Jay, if you're driving, don't do this.
I'm just watching him get up right now. Like, yeah, no, we've got those smart trucks now.
Is this a
no, I'm just assuming you got to stop and not like just getting it up.
That's so fun.
So Jay is driving, therefore he should not do this.
I'm stopped now. I'm stopped now.
You're stopped.
Okay.
I'm working on getting that. I'm working on that document.
Okay. Okay. So these are little enthymemes that are, as we know, reduced syllogisms. But we could take these enthymemes and change them into syllogisms, or we can also take these enthymemes and change them into a Toolman framework. So I want to do that. And what I want us to do with these, and we will probably only do 1 or maybe 2, is figure out the logic, figure out the primary stasis, and consider how you might rebut or qualify the argument. And you will have to infer some elements, because basically these are enthymemes, which is reduced syllogisms. They may be data plus claim, but they are not all. So All right, so on the screen is my copy of this, the one that says exercise to play with in class. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so I've got the first one here. So in a poll in a Rhet 1311 class, 12 out of 20 voted for Trump in November 2020. Thus, I conclude President Trump was not supported by college-age students. So the easiest thing probably is to start with the Toolman term. What's the data?
The poll that was taken in
poll.
the class.
So
that's your data.
So that's my data. In a poll in a Rhet 1311 class, 12 out of 20 voted for Trump in 1220. Then what's my claim or conclusion? Thus I conclude, I tried to give it away here. Therefore, President Trump was not supported by college-age students. Data, claim. What is the warrant that allows me to get from this data to this claim? What do I need to believe?
That college age students did not like Trump.
No, that doesn't help me. How do I get from data to claim?
Oh,
What's the unstated assumption? What you have to believe, you probably hear things like this all the time, right? Most of the people I talk to support, I remember back in my first election, presidential election, it was the Reagan, it was 1980, Reagan against, can't remember the Democrat anymore. And I was going around, everybody I know supported the Democrat, therefore the Democrat's going to win. What's wrong with that kind of lot? Well, so.
Was it Jimmy Carter?
Pardon? No.
Was it Jimmy Carter?
No, Carter was in 76. Carter was he?
Oh, was it Walter Mondale?
Yeah. Reagan. Yeah, Carter didn't rerun. Anyway, back to this. What's the warrant, the unstated assumption that you have to have in order to get from the data to the claim? If you've taken statistics classes, you've talked about this.
oh crap! I know the word. I can see it, but I don't know. I don't.
Well, explain it.
I mean, wouldn't it really depend on where you're polling? Because if you were to go into a group of people who primarily supported Biden to begin with, or like,
all you have is this. What are you assuming? I mean, whether it's true or not would depend. Definitely.
Would it be that more people support the other candidate?
No. So if I say, in my 1311 class, most of the students supported Trump, therefore, oh, I'm sorry. I know why you're having problems. I originally had this worded differently. Start over. All right. More people voted for Trump in my 1311 class. Therefore, Biden was not supported by college-age students. Or to put it more positively, so don't I have to believe that the 1311 class is representative of all college students across
Yeah.
the universe, across the United States?
Yeah.
In order to make this kind of argument, so in a poll in a UALR, Rhet 1311 class, 12 out of 20 voted for Trump. Therefore, I conclude that Trump was supported by college-age students nationwide. What is the warrant I'm saying? Well, I'm saying that this finding is representative of all college-wide students, which is kind of what Micah was getting at when she said, doesn't it depend on whether it is a class that supported Trump or not, or whatever? How many times do we see logic like this? People say, you know, I found this, therefore I'm going to say that it applies everywhere. This is what's
Fox
called,
News.
pardon? What?
He said Fox News.
No. So you've got
But
to
it's a very
weigh
narrow line of thinking, though. Like, you're not looking at every
Yes,
sample size fact. You're like, I don't know, you're ignoring like a whole population completely then and making a kind of a really shooting from the hip assumption.
right. But just to make sure that you don't think that these things is just problems with Fox News, it's the same argument I made back in 1980. So everyone I know is voting for Mondale, therefore Mondale will win.
Walter Mondale's family didn't even vote for him, probably.
Yeah, there are so many people in the United States. You could be surrounded, and this gets at one of the problems that we live in right now is we can be surrounded by multiple people, but they all have the same point of view, and we don't realize that there are other points of view floating around out there. This idea of people in their silos. or, participating in their echo chambers. And that's, partly a function of the numbers of people. There are so many people, you can easily be surrounded by people who share your presuppositions. And therefore you don't understand the other points of view. But so the warrant is that UALR Rep 1311 class is representative of college students nationwide. And the warrant, whoops. In my example is people I know are representative of people nationwide. And so that's the data, conclusion, and warrant. Those are the same things as are in the syllogism. The warrant is the syllogism. So, I'm sorry, is the major premise. So UALR Rep 1311 class is representative of college students nationwide. In a poll in a UALR Rep 1311 class, 12 out of 20 voted for Trump. Therefore, the president was not supported by college-age students. Conclusion. That way. Or put it affirmatively, former President Trump was supported by college-age students nationwide. So the major premise is the warrant in this particular enthymeme. The major premise is the generalization, the warrant, the unstated premise. The minor premise is the data. Here. And the conclusion is that Biden wasn't supported by college-age students. In order to come up with this argument, you have to believe that this one example is representative of that population nationwide. We know it wasn't. Well, actually, I'm pretty sure we know it wasn't. So again, we can rebut all different parts of an argument. Now, the minor premise is usually the data, which is the facts. So if we were rebutting a minor premise, we're rebutting a fact. It's a debate over the facts. We can also debate the warrant. How would you debate that warrant?
By saying that that class is not representative of college students nationwide.
Right. And there are, this is really the whole thing that you learn in a statistics class, if you've taken statistics, that because you can't study an entire population of people, you always can only study a group of people, what's called a sample. And so the whole goal of statistical calculations is to make sure that whatever sample of people you're looking at is representative of the larger population that you want to study. So, if you interview 3 people and you find out X, Y, and Z, those three people have to be representative of whatever larger population is you wanted to study. It's unlikely for that to happen because 3 is such a small n. And so the types of complaints people will call about this is, sort of a hasty generalization where you're jumping to conclusions based on, overgeneralizing from a small population, or a problem of a small n being the letter n, where n equals the number in a data set. And you hear people saying this all the time. They're making generalizations or jumping to conclusions based on a population that is not representative of the larger group that you're trying to look at, or even worse, just looking, one single example, and then you're making some generalization, So this example helps you see how kind of working out the arguments when people are debating and you're trying to, people are arguing with you and telling you that this is what you should do, think, or believe. Sometimes it helps to step back, figure out what's going on, and figure out if it's a valid argument. The whole point about syllogisms is a syllogism's conclusion is true if the major and minor premises are true. So this conclusion that Biden wasn't supported by college-age students can only be true if both the major and minor premise are true. And in this case, as we said, there's a major premise that probably is not true, or an assumption that you made that probably is not true. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? Can I answer any questions about these?
Would you make that document available to us online somehow?
Yeah, all this is going to be, it's everything's going to be available. Well, this document is linked into the slideshow, so that's one place you'll get it.
Okay.
But
okay, cool.
I didn't want you to be writing on the document we were looking at. That's why I sent you the Word and PDF versions, because I was kind of thinking it would be good to have you try writing them out on the next one. So insert break. All right. So this kind of gets at all the Fox News arguments. What is the data? So I'd like everybody to sit down on a piece of paper, hopefully if you can do that, or on the screen, whatever. See if you can write out either a syllogism or Toolman data claim warrant here. Okay, so it sometimes helps when you have an enthymemic type statement like this to get it reframed into a sort of claim, therefore, or fact, so kind of statement, which is actually a data. So of these two statements, so did you, in thinking about this, think about basically these two parts of the argument? Or maybe let me ask it a different way. How many of you have something like this for data?
I have like the exact same thing.
You have data, Seuss Enterprise stopped publishing 6 books because of their stereotyped objectionable drawings. Good.
Same, me too.
Great. See, you guys are getting it. Was that Morgan's voice?
No, me. My chair is, I'm short. Sorry.
Who was it?
Me, Aaliyah.
Oh, it was you. Okay.
Yes.
I'd only see a few pictures. So, and I couldn't remember who was here or not. So that's the data. Seuss Enterprise stopped publishing 6 books because of their stereotyped objectionable drawings. And then how many then had something like this? I definitely kind of reframed it. So in my original, I have this very generic passive construction. But that could be it too. I guess it would be something like that. So how many of you have something like that for the conclusion?
I have something similar. I think mine is like, I did it more in syllogism form, like, therefore, this is evidence of cancel culture. It's
Okay.
kind of close.
So therefore, this is evidence. Now, notice that cancel culture itself is an enthymeme. I mean, the word cancel culture conveys a whole bunch of presuppositions. And maybe 10 years ago, if you heard that phrase, you'd have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. But when somebody says the word cancel culture now, what are some of the things that come to mind?
Like Lou Dobbs.
Lou Dobbs, and what has he said?
Well, didn't he get canceled?
Okay. So why did he get canceled?
I don't even remember now.
It was
Obviously
probably
something is
part of the
dead.
Me Too movement. So there's a lot of things that have been canceled. the thing that most comes to my mind is the debate over Confederate statues. And
Yeah.
Other things that convey something that is not on the side of the whole liberal point of view. I think he was probably a sexual predator of some kind. And so that's probably, I better check my facts in case I'm defaming somebody. But it is the term that is being used to describe the left side of the equation in the culture wars, where people are saying, you know, we don't like this, so we should get rid of it. And part of what comes to mind is that there's Fox News and that there's all sorts of people getting all heated up over various things. And so the article that Micah had shared also compared it to the Mr. Potato Head controversy. So the company that makes Mr. Potato Head is now going to call that brand the Potato Head brand. They're still going to have a Mr. Potato Head and a Mrs. Potato Head. And apparently they're going to have baby potato heads coming along here. But so some of these people, some of the right got very exercised about this. So that, to go back to this cancel culture word as an enthymeme itself, just the word, just the phrase is an enthymeme. And, you know, the way you say it will be creating all sorts of arguments that are floating around and never expressed. This data and claim works if, what is the warrant? What do you have to believe to go from Seuss Enterprises stopped publishing 6 books because of stereotypes to we are in a cancel culture environment? Probably something like this. We are going over time, so I want to stop. But
so to stop publishing on account of that would be cancel culture.
What?
So to stop publishing on account of that it's objectionable, that would be cancel culture. Is that the warrant?
Yeah, but I think it's that's one of the steps there. I think stopping publishing 6 books is cancel. I mean, somewhere in there, you are making the generalization that to stop publishing 6 books is a larger thing that is canceling all of Dr. Seuss and is
okay.
And but there are a lot of sub steps in there, so it's hard to know how exactly.
That's an interesting analogy.
Right. And it is based on this idea of what does cancel culture mean? So, you know, I've said that the syllogism is useful for logic, and the toolman or the enthymeme are more likely in rhetoric. You can see when you get into these very complex arguments, because these are very complex arguments, that thinking about all the different sort of warrants, the unstated presuppositions, is sort of part of what goes on. And if you disagree, then you start challenging. So one of the arguments against this claim, and I think it was expressed actually in the Guardian article that Micah expressed, is, you know, they are overgeneralizing here. Stopping publishing 6 books is not at all the same as canceling Dr. Seuss. And they rebut that by providing evidence of how much Dr. Seuss is still out there available out on the internet. It's been published since the 30s. And so, you know, lots of people are still going to be reading him. And the book sales of Dr. Seuss increased after the Seuss company decision. And also, when people were saying it's a violation of free speech, which is part of the canceling culture argument, people are saying, well, this wasn't a government action, this was a company's action. Okay, so I feel bad, I'm going way over time here. I wanted to see if we could clearly help use these terms to look at sort of interesting enthymemes. The decision by Seuss Enterprises to stop publishing 6 books because of their stereotyped objectionable drawings is evidence of cancel culture. Which type of stasis is that?
Would it be definition?
I think that's definitely a way to do it. What are they defining?
The decision as cancel culture.
Right, they're saying, do this equals this. I was thinking of it more as a fact thing, that, you know, they are canceling Dr. Seuss. But either way, you see that the basic way to debate it is, no, this has nothing to do with cancel culture. You know, this is something else, and them redefining it. The thing is about cancel culture, it being itself this big enthymeme, is, yeah, once you start giving a term to it, it definitely, once you define something, that carries all sorts of warrants with it. So a definitional warrant carries all sorts of presuppositions about the criteria of what it is to meet cancel culture. What is cancel culture, etc. Okay, so I will somebody chatted. Going to try to restart. Oh, sorry. When I share, I can't see the chat anymore, and can't tell who's there and not. So I apologize for not being able to tell who's there and who's saying something. in fact, in the future, if you guys can see the chat, if you can bring my attention to anything in there. I'm not going to share back to the PowerPoint, but so the test is open tomorrow. Actually, I've set it up so it'll be open tonight at midnight, and start thinking about your rhetorical analysis. And then we will start on chapter 4 on structure next week. So have a great week.
You too.
Sorry for being over.